It's a packed stadium on a warm night in Istanbul. The year is 2001, and giants Barcelona and Fenerbahçe are facing off in a highly anticipated game. Barcelona surges to a 3-0 lead, but what no one in the stadium knows is that this score has just triggered a secret plan. Suddenly, the stadium lights go out and everything goes dark. Most people think it's just a power failure, but behind the scenes, it's something else. A Singaporean man named Dan Tan had paid 4 technicians to cut the lights when the score hit 3-0, trying to get the match cancelled and win big on a bet, but the plan backfires. Backup power kicks in, the game goes on, and Dan Tan would later put it simply, "That's how I lost $3 million. This bold fix was just one part of a much larger network. Over the years, investigators uncovered hundreds of rigged matches across the globe, from local leagues to World Cup qualifiers. At the center was Dan Tan Seet Eng, a quiet Singaporean who rarely watched football, yet built the biggest match-fixing empire the sport had ever seen. This is the story of how a man from the tiny city-state of Singapore rose to become the underworld king of football fixers. Dan Tan Seet Eng, commonly known as Dan Tan, is a Singaporean who would later gain infamy as a global match-fixing mastermind. Born in 1964, Tan did not complete secondary school and drifted into the world of gambling at a young age. By his early 30s, he had already faced legal trouble, serving a short jail term in the early 1990s for illegal horse racing and football betting activities. This early brush with the law did little to deter his gambling ambitions. In fact, Tan was such an avid gambler that he once lost a staggering $1.5 million on bets during the 1994 World Cup, a loss so severe that he briefly fled Singapore to escape his creditors. He returned only after arranging to pay off his debts in installments, illustrating both his high-stakes betting habits and resourcefulness in the face of adversity. Throughout the late 1990s, Dan Tan built up a reputation as a high roller in gambling circles. Friends described him as having a keen eye for investments and noted that he was a high-stakes gambler, often seen betting heavily on horse races and football matches. Despite the wealth he gained through gambling, Tan maintained a surprisingly modest lifestyle. Those who knew him said he avoided flashy cars and luxury watches, choosing instead to keep a low profile. Outwardly, he seemed like a laid-back investor and devoted family man, but behind the scenes, Dan Tan was on a path that would soon make him the kingpin of a global match-fixing empire. Tan's shift from gambler to global match fixer began in the early 2000s. That's when he started building a network of contacts and planning ways to rig football matches for profit. Quietly and carefully, he began assembling an international operation designed to manipulate game outcomes. He was turning the world's most beloved sport into a business by illegally fixing matches to win big in the betting markets. Dan Tan's earliest steps into match fixing came through his partnership with another infamous Singaporean fixer, Wilson Raj Perumal. Perumal had years of experience in rigging matches and introduced Tan to the mechanics of how it all worked, paying off players and referees, setting up matches where outcomes could be controlled, and using online betting platforms to profit from the results. Together, they operated through a company called Exclusive Sports Private, previously known as Football 4U, which organized friendly matches and provided referees, all under the guise of legitimate sports marketing. The scale of their operations quickly expanded. Tan's network began fixing matches across Europe, Asia, and Africa. One notable incident took place in 2010 when Perumal managed to send an entire fake national team to play in a match. That game was a friendly between Bahrain and what was supposed to be Togo. Bahrain won easily, but it was later discovered that none of the players actually represented Togo. The entire team was made up of imposters. The result was fixed, and the syndicate profited. Perumal and Tan manipulated not only friendlies and exhibition matches with low visibility, but also targeted official league games with higher stakes. In late 2010, a bizarre incident shook the Italian Third Division League. Several players from the team Cremonese collapsed on the field or showed signs of being drugged. Investigators discovered their own goalkeeper had secretly slipped sedatives into their drinks, an attempt to sabotage his team's performance. That case led authorities to uncover a broader match-fixing ring known as the Zingari, which had clear links to Singapore. The funding and coordination traced back to Tan's growing network. Italian prosecutors named him as a key figure behind the operation and issued an arrest warrant in December 2011. But with no extradition treaty between Singapore and the European Union, Tan remained untouchable. The turning point came in February 2011. Wilson Raj Perumal was arrested in Finland for fixing matches in the local league. To avoid a heavy sentence, he struck a deal with investigators and began revealing everything, including Tan's role as the man financing the operations. He explained how the syndicate worked. They placed thousands of small bets instead of a few big ones, each around €100, to avoid suspicion. And the money flowed across borders through underground systems like Hawala, which left no trace. By early 2013, the full scale of Dan Tan's match-fixing empire had come into focus. Europol, the EU's law enforcement agency, announced that a Singapore-based network was behind at least 680 suspicious matches worldwide, including World Cup qualifiers and Champions League games. The operation had reportedly earned over $10 million in illegal profits, with some matches bringing in millions each. Interpol named Dan Tan the leader of the world's most notorious match-fixing syndicate, confirming his status as the mastermind behind one of the biggest sports corruption rings in history. Given the global scale of his operations, it's almost certain that Tan earned hundreds of millions. Despite growing international pressure, Tan remained out of reach and continued to profit. In a rare 2013 online chat with German magazine Der Spiegel, he took a surprisingly ironic tone, saying that one has to proceed against these criminals. He claimed he never personally bribed players, but admitted to offering contributions of up to €800,000. He also confessed to losing $3 million in a failed attempt to fix the 2001 match between Barcelona and Fenerbahçe. On the flip side, he claimed his biggest win was €15 million from a single fixed Serie A game. By mid-2013, authorities in multiple countries were after Dan Tan. Prosecutors in Hungary even indicted him in absentia, along with 44 other suspects, for allegedly rigging 32 games in leagues spanning Hungary, Italy, and Finland. Dan Tan had built a lucrative criminal empire on fixing football matches, but the law was finally catching up with him. In September 2013, Dan Tan's run ended when Singapore police, under international pressure, arrested him and 13 others in a coordinated island-wide raid. Though unnamed at first, it was clear the so-called match-fixing Kingpin was finally in custody, a move Interpol called a major breakthrough. But prosecuting him wasn't easy. Most of his crimes happened overseas, and Singapore lacked the laws or extradition agreements to charge him properly. With no trial possible, Tan was detained under a law that allows imprisonment without trial for threats to public order. In 2015, Singapore's Court of Appeal ordered his release, ruling that since his crimes happened abroad, the detention was unlawful. The decision sparked outrage from global sports authorities and prosecutors, who had spent years trying to dismantle his network. Just a week later, under growing pressure, Singapore re-arrested him under a revised detention order. He remained in custody for another 4 years. Dan Tan was finally released in December 2019 under strict supervision, wearing an ankle tag, observing a curfew, and reporting weekly to police. He is still wanted in Europe but has never faced trial. Today, he lives freely in Singapore under quiet watch. His story, from school dropout and high-stakes gambler to the shadowy boss of a global fixing empire, remains a chilling reminder of how far corruption can reach in international sport. To some, Dan Tan is seen as a criminal mastermind. To others, a kind of twisted genius who exploited every gap in the system. Even now, he lives in Singapore under watch, his empire gone, but his name still tied to one of the darkest chapters in the history of the beautiful game.